This is the brand new Balance 442, which is not actually the name of this shoe. It's the New Balance 442, but how many people do you think read it as a number and not a formation? Probably a lot. What's going on, guys? Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feet video of the brand new Balance 442 Pro in the black and white colorway, which as of right now, this is the only color currently on offer, but I'm sure they're awful. They're awful. Not a good start. But I'm sure they'll offer more colorways in the near future. Basically, the 442 Pro is New Balance's attempt at entering into the very competitive kind of value for money option, more specifically shoes that offer a kangaroo leather upper at a lower cost and a more traditional design, look, and style in general. So you could compare this to something like a Copa Mundial. I know they kind of look a lot like that, but the Copa Mundial admittedly is a lot better quality and also more expensive. So it's not the greatest comparison. What is a good comparison though is the Nike Premier 2 that retails for $110. These guys cost $120. So New Balance somehow thought it was a good idea to come in at $10 higher than their main competitor being Nike, which for the record, I don't think that's a great idea. Either way, we're going to be talking about the quality of this particular shoe. We're going to be comparing it directly to the Nike Premier 2 throughout the entire video because that only makes sense. And we'll take a look at how they fit and feel on feet, essentially covering everything you need to know about the new 442 Pro. So if you want to learn more, stick around, watch the entire video. And if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $120 retail price in either the regular width or the wide fit variations. For those that are wondering, this is the regular width one. If you guys do end up enjoying the video, don't forget to support it with a like. And if you're new here watching for the first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. Included with the boots is a red New Balance box, but you were probably expecting that. What you probably weren't expecting though is a string bag, which isn't really a string bag. I mean, it kind of has strings, but you can't wear it as a backpack. The strings are just to seal the top, and it's pretty straightforward, black in color, kind of cheap material with the New Balance logo there on the front. Really nothing special as far as string bags go, but at $120, it might be the cheapest boot that you can buy that does include some kind of a bag. So I have to give it a score. And honestly, it's not a great string bag. It gets a 1 out of 3. So let's start with the upper. And given that this is competing against the Copa Mundial, the Nike Premier 2, other boots at this price point that all offer kangaroo leather, you would expect these to offer the same. And they do. The only issue is you don't actually get that much kangaroo leather, even if compared to the Nike Premier 2. You get a little bit more leather on that particular boot. Now the seams are as follows. It runs kind of along the edge of this side of the New Balance logo, forward all the way through the toe box and forefoot area, and then cuts off at about the same point on the medial side. You can see they even put the little stamp there that signifies that this is a natural material, and it is very cleverly posted right there because from there back, everything else is synthetic. The only other leather you're going to find on the shoe is on the top part of the fold-over flap for the tongue itself. The underside, as you can see, is not leather. The tongue itself is not leather. Everything else is synthetic. And the kangaroo leather you do get is actually quite nice. Again, if I'm comparing it to something like the Copa Mundial or the Nike Premier, it's more like the Copa in regards to overall thickness, but the quality I would say is more along the lines of what you get from the Premier, meaning that it's not quite as nice as the Copa, but you probably weren't expecting it to be that nice anyways. Of course, it's kangaroo leather, so as you wear it in, it softens up tremendously and just feels really, really good, offers a nice touch on the ball, definitely a more padded sensation versus what you'll get from the Premier 2, which I would say as far as kangaroo leather shoes go is kind of on the thinner side. The only issue I have here is, again, most of the upper, the entire midfoot area, the heel doesn't matter quite as much, is entirely made out of synthetic material, which admittedly it feels pretty good. It's a synthetic leather type material, but it's just not quite as soft. It's not quite the same sensation that you'll get at the very front of the shoe. If the entire midfoot area was kangaroo leather, it would completely change the overall quality and softness of this upper as a whole. And that's not to say that these don't feel soft, they just don't feel quite as good or quite as premium as they could have. And again, if I am comparing it directly to the Nike Premier 2, which by the way retails for $10 less, that shoe just offers a more premium leather feel because you get more premium leather rather than mostly synthetic through the midfoot. Then you have the fold over flap tongue, which I do like the design of. It's got a design where basically it's going to stay down no matter what. I almost dropped the shoes. And it's got the Velcro to hold it down as well. But I just don't like the look of it. They kind of tried to make it modern with this extra material around the edge. I just feel like it doesn't match the rest of the fairly old school looking design of this particular boot. It's not ugly, I just don't think it's the best looking fold over flap that they could have made. If they just kind of maintained a more, I guess, straight cut to it, it would have looked a lot more premium. Of course, the laces run directly down the middle. They kept things pretty straightforward in that regard. And the tongue itself is actually really nice, made out of a perforated synthetic material. Even the way they implemented the Velcro, I think, is quite well done. And honestly, the tongue on this shoe, I would say, is nicer than what you'll find on the Nike Premier 2. But when you're wearing the shoes, once they're tied up, honestly, it's not something that you really notice. What you do notice, though, is the fact that the entire upper is not leather when it should be. Something worth mentioning that I wish more brands would do in general is the inclusion of this extra top lace hole. It's a little bit further back and slightly lower than where the final lace hole would normally be, which is obviously still in use. You don't have to use this extra lace hole, but if you want that little bit of extra lockdown in the heel, adding that extra lacing position makes the world of difference. And trust me when I say, which we'll talk about later in the video when it comes to fit, you really do need it given the design of this shoe. Moving to the rear of the shoe, they've obviously kept things very traditional, which makes sense given the style of boot that they were going for. It features an internal plastic heel counter and a pretty standard low cut at the back. The heel liner has a decent amount of padding, but it's this very old school type material. It reminds me a lot of what you'll find on the Copa Mundial, where it almost feels like this kind of slick plastic type finish. It's kind of unusual, and given the socks that you're wearing, if they're just the right softness, it will actually be a little bit slick, meaning that heel slippage could potentially be an issue. If you're wearing grip socks, it's not going to be a problem, but it's one of those heel liners that doesn't feel cheap. It's just not particularly grippy depending on the socks that you're wearing, which is less than ideal. And again, if we're comparing it to the Nike Premier 2, which has a really good quality synthetic suede liner that grips pretty much any sock, I just like that more than what they've done here. The insole is fully removable and actually pretty decent quality. It features a nice mesh lining on the top, and it's made from a single layer of this ortholite foam with a little bit of a grid pattern going. That's honestly there more for looks than anything. Overall though, it's actually a decent quality insole considering the $120 price point. Moving to the base of the shoe, again, it looks very similar to what you'll find on the Nike Premier, but it's not really anything new from New Balance. They took the sole plate and stud pattern straight off of the top end Takala model, which honestly I don't really have any issues with. It's a standard TPU construction for the sole plate itself, which is extremely flexible in the forefoot area, which honestly I don't have too many issues with, mainly because I feel like a shoe like this should have a very flexible sole plate. And then of course you have the firm ground stud pattern, which is definitely more traditional in regards to how it looks, as well as how it performs. It's not overly aggressive, but if I did have to compare it to the Nike Premiers, it does feel like it has slightly more bite on firm natural grass, which by the way, this is a true FG stud pattern. I would not recommend wearing these just like the Nike Premier 2s on artificial grass. Not only because it's hard to say how durable or how well they're going to hold up on an AG surface, but also because this sole plate is so thin that if you are on an artificial grass surface that really doesn't have much padding to it, stud pressure could be an issue for you. So something worth keeping in mind if you're planning on picking these up. Traction is good. It's definitely more aggressive than something you'll get from like a Copa Mundial, which is much more traditional, but it's definitely not too crazy as far as overall aggressiveness is concerned, even though they include little kind of weird things like this toe pick at the front that quite honestly just looks cool and doesn't really do much of anything. Either way, the sole plate base and stud pattern, honestly, I do quite like. Which brings us to the weight, and in a size 9.5 US, the New Balance 442 Pro weighs in at about 9.4 to 9.5 ounces, which admittedly is not super light, but I wasn't expecting this shoe to be that light. However, there's something important to note here, and that is the existence of the Nike Premier 2, which offers very similar materials, a very similar overall construction, and a very similar overall feel, given what's been incorporated into both designs. And those weigh almost a full ounce lighter in the same size. They're gonna be about 8.5, 8.6 ounces, which when you go from 9.5 to 8.5 ounces, that's actually a noticeable amount of weight. Granted, this shoe does feel more heavy duty. It's definitely a more padded upper, a more solid feel, I would argue, versus the Nike Premier 2. But if you're into this style of shoe and you want them to be as light as possible, the Nike Premier 2 is a lighter overall package. So as you can see, I swapped out the stock black laces for some wide white SR4U replacement laces, which admittedly the black ones look fine, but because they incorporated so many little white details with the branding on the side, the tongue, the back, and of course the white sole plate, I really feel like the white laces kind of set off all those accents just that little bit more. Plus they make them a little bit more unique than everyone else who's wearing black and white New Balance boots, which, from being honest, probably won't be too many people. Either way, if you're interested in some replacement laces for yourself, the website to go to is www.sr4ulaces.com. There'll be a little pop-up on screen as well as a link down below in the description. If you're interested in a pair, be sure to go ahead and check that out. So on feet, the New Balance 442 will feel good out of the box. The leather is soft, even the synthetic through the midfoot feels pretty good. It's a central lacing system so you can get them relatively snug, although they're actually very wide shoes. Considering this is the regular width variation, the wide fit ones I can only assume are just extremely wide in general, but I don't really have too many issues with what they did in terms of the upper and the overall shape. I do, however, have an issue with the heel area. I really feel like the shape of the heel is way too wide and way too open. Also, the heel liner, which I did complain about earlier in the video, it's just too slick. This is one of those boots that I feel like you almost have to wear with grip socks, otherwise your heel is going to slide around too much, which can lead to blisters, but is more so just annoying than anything. I don't like the sensation of my heel kind of moving around, and using that extra lace hole like I did on my right foot here does definitely help a little bit, but it doesn't completely solve the issue. So as far as fit is concerned, you kind of expect classic leather shoes to fit extremely well to stretch the exact shape of your foot, but because these are so wide in the first place and the heel's not really something that's going to adjust as you wear them in, I just don't feel like the fit is as good as it should be given what these are, a kangaroo leather traditional style shoe. They don't fit as well as the Premiers, and they certainly don't fit as well as the Copas either, which is a bit of a bummer. As far as width is concerned, like I said, this is the regular width variation, and it's kangaroo leather in the forefoot toe box area, so that area is going to stretch. They're quite wide though, so if you have wide feet, I think these will fit you really nicely, especially if you have a wider heel. And if you have even wider feet, I guess maybe take a look at the wide fit variation, although like I said, these are pretty wide as it is. Definitely will fit most people, although if you have really narrow feet or don't like heel slippage, I'd probably stay away. As far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and length is pretty much perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair for yourself, I would recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, is the New Balance 442 worth $120? And I think the answer to that question is, for the most part, yes. The only issue that I have with this shoe is the fact that other options exist in the same category that are arguably better for the same amount of money or less. The Nike Premier 2 is a boot that I have referenced throughout this entire review. It retails for $110 rather than $120 that you'll have to pay for these. It fits better, it offers better lockdown in the heel, and you get more kangaroo leather for $10 less. So why you would buy this over the Nike Premier 2, it really is hard for me to justify making this as the choice that you should go for. Or if you're on the market for something that's a little bit more modern but still has the kangaroo leather upper, something like the Nike Tiempo Legend 7 Pro, formerly known as the Legacy 3, is also a really good option for the same amount of money that I would argue is better than the New Balance 442. These definitely do fit wider than both of the boots that I just mentioned, and you also have the option of a wide fit variation as well, which is gonna be even wider than these. So if you have tremendously wide feet, maybe this is gonna be a very comfortable fitting boot for you, but I think for the vast majority of people, if you're on the market for this style of boot, if you can find them on sale for a really good price, it's worth it. Otherwise, the two options I mentioned from Nike, I just think are better. Anyways, guys, that is it for my review. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. If you are interested in a pair of these for yourself, again, you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes. You'll be able to pick these up below their normal $120 retail price in the regular width and wide fit variations. If you have any questions, as always, leave them down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.